and welcome to Our Mind Gym with Renee, a Team Ferris original production, where we believe that motocross is more than just going fast. It is an empowering vehicle that teaches us how to navigate life. Join us weekly as we discuss the life lessons and growth mindset that give us a competitive advantage both on and off the track. Hello, and welcome back to episode 8 of Our Mind Gym podcast series. I'm your host, Renee Ferris, and today I'm going to be chatting about self-doubt. In last week's episode, I introduced you to your inner chimp, who has many personas, one of them being Doubtful Debbie. Now, this is the voice that you hear in your head that makes you question what you're doing and wonder whether or not you're good enough. If you did our Mind Gym exercise from last week, you should have noticed just how much this voice pops up. Now, props to all of you who went the extra mile and pushed the limits of your comfort zone just to see how loud these voices can get. Pretty interesting, hey? So, most of you listening here are either motocross families or budding entrepreneurs looking to step up your game. And in order to do that, it is important that we recognize self-doubt for what it is, and we train our minds to depersonalize from the negative thoughts and use our logical reasoning to keep moving forward. Dean often reminds me that races are won on facts, not emotion. And this is the same in business and in life. When our mind starts telling us that we can't do something, we train ourselves to question it. So instead of fighting it, we accept that the voice is showing up because it's missing some information. You see, our chimp can only go off past experiences. And it's got like a natural negative bias, which means it automatically reverts to worst case scenario to try and keep us safe. So of course, if we're trying to push our limits and do something we've never done or improve on our results from last time, this simply cannot be done by looking backwards, only forwards. Because obviously there's no evidence in the past to directly support it. This is why after you've done it, or someone you see as equal ability to you does something, that voice calms down or almost even disappears because your chimp now has evidence that backs up that you can do it, and it will give you the okay. So, what do you do when there's no evidence and you want to take a chance? You break it down to small, actionable steps and focus points. You see, here's the thing. Often when we use a label or a big fancy title of the end game, it looks, sounds, and feels difficult. But when we break it down into small, bite-sized, incremental steps, all of a sudden, it doesn't look that scary or difficult. For example, if we were out at the track and you were doing consistent laps out practicing, then I turned to you and said, go and drop 5 seconds off your lap time. You'd probably laugh and say something like, oh yeah, right, sure, and count yourself out without even trying. But if I then said, there are 10 corners on this track, go out, do a lap, and the moment you feel like braking, when you normally would, hold the throttle on just half a second longer before hitting the brakes, and do that in every corner. You'd probably then say, okay, well, half a second doesn't really sound that much, so I'll go try it. Well, guess what? Half a second on each corner over a 10-corner track equals 5 seconds off your lap time. Try to tell me that isn't interesting. So just reflecting back on that scenario that I just ran you through, I want you to just quickly pay attention to your body. Did you feel it tense up when I said, go and drop 5 seconds a lap? And did you feel it release and your shoulders sink a little when I broke it down and just suggested to hold the throttle on for simply half a second longer in each corner? Funny, isn't it? The thing is, our brain is so complex that it is smarter than any computer, but our conscious mind can only comprehend small amounts of data at once. So, in our limited awareness, we only see part of the picture at any given moment. And our chimp has a natural tendency to rush to conclusions that, without training it, the logic of the situation just doesn't even get a chance to come through before we've reacted. And it's the same in life, you know. If you've got a goal to like start your own business and you've only ever been an employee, your chimp will go crazy because it'll be presented with so many different options as to where to start, how to do it, what if this, what if that. But if the moment you make a plan and break it down to singular steps, example, go to www.abr.gov.au, fill in the form, request an ABN. None of that sounds difficult, right? You know your name, you know your address, you know your phone number, you know the industry your business is in. You can definitely do step 1. No self-doubt there. Then you go to step 2. Break it down, take one step at a time. So the trick here, in both examples, is to focus on the process rather than the end result. You see, process uses logic and reasoning, cause and effect. But when you look too far like out into the future and you start focusing on the end results, our emotions come into play full swing. And this is because what we do is we create like this vivid imagination of how we want it to go. We get emotionally invested in that being the outcome. In fact, the more we want something, the more we fear the loss of it. And it is the fear of that loss that creates the self-doubt and the insecurity, which drives us to back out. And this is why so many racers actually ride really well when they're out practicing. And then when they get to the racetrack, they tense up and they just don't ride to their ability. They put so much like expectations and stuff on themselves about how they wish for the day to go that they forget about the process. It sounds simple, but it's so common. You know, worry creeps in. The what ifs get louder and louder. And ultimately, the emotion of the day clouds their judgment. And think about it, has it ever happened to you? Have you ever like got to race day and been so worried about the end result that your riding suffered? It definitely happened to me when I used to race as a kid. And this is also why sometimes you might find you perform better at like a smaller event, like a club day, than a national or a state level race. It's important to know that it actually has absolutely nothing to do with your ability and everything to do with the pressure you put on yourself, the fantasy you have of winning, and the fear that you have of losing. The interesting thing is, like, if you just forget about emotion for a second and play with the facts are you're on the same bike, you're got the same level of fitness, regardless of the size of the event, you are still the same person. So the only thing that's different is what you're focusing on, what you're thinking about. And the craziest thing of all is that by reacting to our emotions and letting our chimp drive us, we actually ride worse and increase the probability of getting exactly what we don't want. Now, I'm not sure if I've gone off topic here or not, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that life is a game of perspective. The way you look at things matter. Your self-doubt, insecurity, anxiety, overwhelm, and all of the feelings that come with them have absolutely nothing to do with your ability or your situation. It has everything to do with your perspective. And at the risk of sounding a little bit cliche, I want you to know that when you change the way you see things, the things you see change. When you change the way you see things, the things you see change. So, let's talk about what it is that you see. You see, when you're feeling self-doubt, that tells me that you're in your head playing over probable scenarios in your imagination, which you're either seeing A, the pain and suffering from failing, where you don't achieve what you set out to, and you're playing out all of the possible consequences and the drawbacks and the shitty things about it from failing. Or B, you might see the highlight reel of all of the benefits if you succeed, your absolute fantasy, where you achieve what you set out for and more. It's all lollipops and rainbows. Everything's amazing. Now, the problem with A, where you focus on failing, is that you exaggerate the pain so much in your mind that when compared to your current reality, which is familiar and you're already surviving, seems worse. And so if you spend too much time in this part of your mind, you're actually likely to give up before you even try, or find some way to like self-sabotage yourself with maybe like an injury or something that stops you from being able to give it 100%. And on the flip side to that, there's also then drawbacks to focusing on the fantasy, being in lollipop and rainbow land, where you play out only the highlight reel of the benefits of succeeding. Because the thing is, in our fantasies, we often actually ignore the drawbacks and the cost to achieving what we want. So our fantasy, in actual fact, creates like a standard that we simply can't live up to. And our intuition knows that. So ultimately, we create a fear of it not happening. And that has the ability to block our progress. The key here is to see the content in your mind, accept the feelings as a result of the images that you've created, and then depersonalize from the emotions and ask yourself high quality questions that will keep you present and in the current moment so you can focus on taking the necessary actions to get the results. Now, before I wrap up today's episode with our mind gym exercise, I want to make one final point. Sometimes the reason that we doubt ourselves is because we've tried in the past and we haven't succeeded. So we reflect on our past decisions and realizing that those behaviors are not going to get us where we want to go. And in that event, you're looking backwards and you're seeing all the frustration and the pain of not getting it right the first time. Because let's get it right. It feels shitty in the moment. But a quick perspective shift that you can take here to help you with this is to reflect on the same memories. But this time, instead, choose to consciously look for the lessons and the opportunities that you got from failing in that first attempt. Ask yourself, how specifically are those lessons going to help me this time? What you'll soon find is that failure is not the end. Failure is simply an opportunity for us to try again, but with more knowledge. And to switch from self-doubt to self-confidence, something else you can do is start asking yourself, how are you better prepared this time? What other growth have you had since the last time you attempted it? How is having previous experience going to help you this time? And this is really relevant when it comes to the racers of you that are out listening. Maybe last time that you went to a certain track, you sucked, or you just really struggled on the track. It's really wise that before you go back to the track the next time and start doubting yourself and thinking that you're going to do shit because that's what happened last time, actually use some logic here and think about, okay, what have I done since then? Maybe because you struggled there, you went back and you worked on some skills. And if you didn't, here's the wake-up call to go and do that. But the idea of it is recognize that what happens in our brain is different things trigger us. And so when you get to that track, there'll be parts and things that you'll see that your brain will go, oh, this happened last time, painful memory, chimp switches on, warning, warning, warning. So what we want to do here is know the trigger, recognize it, and then overpower it with logic. And ask yourself, okay, great, that is what happened last time. I accept that. But that does not mean that that's what's going to happen this time. This time around, I'm in a different position because, well, A, you're already definitely older, which means you've had more experience, more time. Most likely, if you've been training, you're more stronger. You're probably fitter. And if you've been practicing and developing your skills, you've got more skills than last time. So who knows what you can achieve? Which is where I'm going to leave this episode. So this week's mind gym exercise is to practice seeing every event in your life as on the way and not in the way. So what I want you to do is reflect back at past memories that are playing over and over in your mind when you doubt yourself and ask yourself this: how was that the right thing for me at that time and that moment in my life? And how can I use that to help me this time? The second thing I'd love for you to do this week, which is what I'm going to be doing alongside you, is looking at what you want to achieve and breaking it down into the small bite-sized chunks. Look at what skills you have and what do you need to develop. Then put one foot in front of the other and let's start taking these steps. So thank you once again for joining me here at Our Mind Gym podcast. I'm so grateful you're on this journey with me, and I look forward to reading all of your messages as they come through on how you go. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here next Wednesday.